I'm traveling around the world in 80 folktales. Want to go on tour with me? It's day one, and we're starting in Latvia. This tale is called The Wolf and the Raven. One day a wolf was running around the forest when he had the misfortune to step on a nail. Pain seared through his little foot, and he stumbled. Unable to walk, and unable to remove the nail from his foot with his clumsy snout, he feared this meant the end of his life. A raven noticed the wolf's suffering and flew closer to see what had happened. The wolf knew that in his current state, getting a meal was going to be tougher, so he took a chance and caught the raven in his jaws. But the raven protested. "Please don't eat me, Mr. Wolf. If you spare my life, I can save yours. My small but strong beak can remove that stubborn nail from your toe bean." The wolf realized that the raven was right, so he set him down. And the raven kept his word, cleanly removing the nail from the wolf's foot. The wolf was very grateful. "Not only do I spare your life, my feathered friend, I make you this promise. As long as I'm around, you'll never go hungry." And since then, wolves and ravens work together to get through the long, lonely winter. Thanks for traveling to Latvia with me today. Here's a little more information on the story I shared. And let me know in the comments where we should travel for our next folktale. I'm traveling around the world in 80 folktales. Want to go on tour with me? It's day number 2, and we're going to East Africa. The collection of African folktales I have are divided into linguistic regions rather than specific countries. Hence our stop in a more generalized region today. Today's tale is a sad and lovely one called The Poor Man and His Wife of Wood. There once was a beggar who didn't have much, but he tended to get by. However, he longed for companionship more than anything else, someone to come home to at the end of the day and share a meal with. The man cut down a tree from the forest, and he carved it into a woman. He also carved her necklaces and jewels from the lumber. And how wonderful it was when the woman came to life. Her name was Mwanamizi, child of the root, and they lived happily together for many days. This happiness was ended when one day Mwanamizi was spied by a palace servant, and the servant rushed right back to the Sultan, telling him all about the beautiful woman she had seen. The ruler decided that such a beauty must be his own, so he stole away with the woman. When the beggar returned to his empty home and found out what had happened, he rushed to the Sultan and begged that he release his wife. But the Sultan refused and turned him out. So the beggar stood under the window of Mwanamizi's chamber and sang to her, "Hear my words, I call to thee. My wife was once a gorgeous tree. If you won't send my poor wife home, give me her jewelry to atone. Mwanamizi, let me go." The Sultan told the woman to discard the wooden ornaments as they were of no value to him, but Mwanamizi was reluctant to take them off. As the beggar continued to sing, however, she threw him all of her pieces but for one small charm around her neck. The Sultan pushed her again to bestow the last charm, as the beggar wouldn't leave before he had every piece. But what the Sultan didn't know was that the small charm Mwanamizi had left was what contained her soul. She was bathed in tears, but at last she threw the beggar her last charm. And with that, she transformed back into a tree, right in the middle of the Sultan's palace. You can read this tale and more in this collection published by Flame Tree Publishers. But for even more great African folklore here on TikTok, you must follow my friends Adechi Atelier for their incredible content. They create their own original beautiful artwork inspired by African mythology while telling you the stories. That's our East African tale for today. Let me know in the comments where we should travel for day 3. I'm traveling around the world in 80 folktales. Want to go on tour with me? Today is day 3, and we're off to Malaysia for the tale of Princess Walinong Sari. Walinong Sari was no prissy princess. She was an exceptionally skilled martial artist in the Malay art of silat. She was also wildly beautiful. Her father invited all to come compete for her hand, but they would have to duel the princess herself. As Walinong Sari defeated competitor after competitor, it seemed as if no man could be her equal. At least, no man of this world. Tales of the beautiful warrior princess had reached the heavens, all the way to the handsome celestial king, Raja Mambang Sagara, in his home at Mount Tehan. Eager to meet the impressive woman, he disguised himself as an old man and went to call on her. Walinong Sari received him as she did all others, wearing a veil under her eyes. The Raja challenged the princess to a duel, and the fight got underway. Both were highly skilled at silat, so much so that the duel seemed to be at a stalemate, dragging on for 3 days and 3 nights. Exhausted, the two forged on. But then the princess' veil fell, revealing her stunning face. The Raja was so overwhelmed by her beauty, he swooned into a faint. The princess and her attendants cleaned and tended to the unconscious old man. As they did, the Raja's disguise melted away, revealing the handsome, godly man before them. The princess fell instantly in love. But just as the face of her worthiest suitor was revealed, a lightning storm besieged the palace. For the Raja's father had learned that not only had a mortal shown herself to be a superior to a celestial in battle, but had also made that celestial faint. And when the lightning and thunder had abated, the man was gone. The princess was devastated and wept herself to sleep. That night, a wise man visited her dreams, revealing the identity of the mysterious man she'd fallen in love with. When Walinong Sari woke, she packed her bags and set out for Mount Tahan. No one knows if she ever found her beloved, for the princess was never seen again. That's our Malaysian folktale for today. Thank you so much to Malaysian artist Rizal Aziz for allowing me to share his gorgeous artwork. You can follow him right here on this very app. Check out my sources if you'd like to learn more about this tale. And let me know in the comments where we should go for day 4. Look, like it or not, God says yes to gender-affirming healthcare. At least according to fairy tales he does. I'm traveling around the world in 80 folk tales. Want to join me? Today we're off to Chile, and I didn't mean to rhyme. And I've got a delightful folktale for you called Florinda. Once upon a time, there was a young lady named Florinda, and she was a very devout person. She had been gifted a crucifix on her birth that she kept with her 24/7. Until the kids at school began making fun of her. From then on, she left it at home on a makeshift altar, but she was sure to keep God in her heart. Tragically, the girl's mother passed on. And if that weren't trauma enough, her father decided that the only eligible maiden for him to marry was herself. Yes, this is one of those dad wants to marry his daughter tales. Florinda was aghast, and she ran to her room praying out loud for God to save her. And God did. He literally beamed her to her godmother's place. So Florinda decided she would live as a man in her new life. She asked her godmother to cut her hair short, and she stole her father's own clothes and horse to run away. Her manly disguise was so convincing that she literally ran into her own father twice, and he had no idea it was her. Florinda eventually stopped at a neighboring castle to ask for food and shelter. And the king there was so charmed by this babylicious young man who showed up at his door, he was convinced that the boy would be the perfect match for his daughter, the princess. Now, Florinda tried to get out of it, but the wedding was fast-tracked. The ceremony happened, the two were married, but during the wedding night, Florinda decided to come clean with the princess. Fortunately for Flo, the princess was thrilled that she had actually married a lady, and she promised to keep the secret. And things were fine and dandy, until the princess's godfather decided to pay a visit. But before he came over, the godfather decided to consult his prophet to get a sneak peek at this guy his goddaughter had married. And the prophet totally narked on Florinda. The princess has married a woman. The princess's godfather was horrified. And he told her father, the king, who didn't believe him. So the two men placed a wager on Florinda's true gender and set out to try and prove it. Now, Florinda was able to pass the first few tests. They were all the sort of, can you do this manly man feat type of thing, shooting, hunting, etc., etc. But the old guys upped the ante and invited Florinda for a skinny dip. And that's when Flo and the princess figured the jig was up. Now, the princess was like, I'm your ride or die, babe. I'm with you to the bitter end. And the day of the bathing date, the men made sure to insist that this was a no-pants party. So Florinda rode ahead of them, hoping that she could jump in the river before they could see any of her privates. And she was successful, but the men were insistent. Hey man, you don't have to hide from us. We're all gentlemen here. There's nothing to be scandalized about. So Florinda gritted her teeth and prepared to not only bear her secret, but to bear, well, everything. Lo and behold, just as she began wading to the shallow end, her old crucifix flew over her head out of nowhere, and God himself poofed Florinda into a man. Florinda was ecstatic. He made sure to show off his junk to the gents, giving his business an enthusiastic scrub and shaking his shank for all to admire. Well, having lost a good deal of his wealth in the bet, the princess's godfather had some choice words for his prophet. Why the hell would you tell me the princess married a woman? He said. I saw the man in his birthday suit. The prophet shrugged. I don't know what to tell you. The princess married a woman, and now that woman is a man. God works in mysterious ways. That's our Chilean tale for today. Check out my sources if you want to read the full tale. And let me know in the comments where we should go for day 5. For me, the ideal fairy tale would include women helping women, some romance, and cats. Well, India provided that perfect fairy tale. I'm traveling around the world in 80 folktales. Want to stow away with me? Today's folktale is The Cat Who Became a Queen. Once upon a time, there was a king who had 100 wives, but not a single one of them had produced an heir. The king was humiliated. He couldn't stomach the idea that it might be that his little soldiers weren't marching, so he blamed the womenfolk. So the womenfolk came up with a plan to trick the king and save themselves. They sent word to the king that one of his wives was expecting, and in due time, she had a daughter. But, they told the king, the divine has declared that you may not see your daughter, the princess, until her wedding day. Now, a good lie has a kernel of truth to it, and the women were raising a little girl. It just happened that the child was a kitten. Years passed, and the king was none the wiser. One day he announced he had found a kind and clever prince for his daughter to wed. So the women had to think quickly once more. Lucky for them, the prince was very kind. He agreed to protect the women and go along with the ruse. On the day of the wedding, the king got so sloshed, he didn't even realize that his daughter had never technically appeared before him. So the prince was able to escort the cat to his private chambers, where he kept her. As the days passed, the prince's mother began to pity the poor woman her son had married. The poor girl was kept in her room all day and not allowed to see anyone. So one day, the prince's mother knocked at the door of the chamber. "My poor girl," she said, "how lonely you must be." In response, she heard crying from within, and her heart grew even heavier. The cat's crying was in earnest. She was lonely. She had lived so many years hidden from the world, and now she didn't even have her mothers to take care of her. Her plaintive cries reached the goddess Parvati, who pleaded to her husband Shiva on the cat's behalf. With the help of a magical oil, the cat was transformed into a beautiful woman. A tiny patch of fur remained on the woman's shoulder, so that the prince would know that she was the very same cat he had cared for. And so blessed, the couple lived happily. Though the king's wives sure had a surprise for them waiting at the next family reunion. That's my Indian folktale for today, and this was my source. Let me know in the comments where we should go for day 6. And if you enjoyed yourself, check out one of these things.